Good morning, everybody. Well, at least if you're in the United States, it's probably still morning. My name is Dennis. You are watching Watches with Dennis, and we have a number of new releases. I'm doing the finger air quote thing for the new releases because some of these actually came out or were revealed by last week, maybe even a little bit earlier in one instance. But we didn't cover new releases last week, which sometimes I don't on the live stream. And I wanted to go ahead and get caught up with some of those things because I didn't see any necessarily particularly compelling point to doing some other broader topic. However, that being said, we are going to talk not just about watches, but we will cover the new Rolex book as well, which was, I suppose, a new release as a matter of thinking, but not a new watch in and of itself, because it is actually a book about watches, actually one model line of watches. So anyway, jumping back into housekeeping like I like to normally do at the start of the morning. I haven't had any new pre-recorded videos. I had hoped to have the Parmigiani Tonda PF micro rotor watch review done by now. However, what ended up happening is there was a naked eye visible blemish on the dial. I thought it might have been a scratch in the paint because it gleamed the color of brass. And while it wasn't particularly obvious, I mean, it would show in certain angles. So anyway, the watch was under warranty, used warranty. That's one of the reasons why I often buy through used dealers. So I did send that watch back in to have the dial addressed. It looks like it was a contamination of some sort. They cleaned it. They actually got to it really, really fast, and I got the watch back a couple days ago. So I actually this morning shot the review video. So I have the raw footage, but I have not edited it yet. So will it come out today? Maybe, but I'm actually hosting a party later. So it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get to it today. I got other stuff I got to do. So anyway, that should be coming this weekend. I should have that out by Monday, but by before Monday. So there's that. And then in terms of, actually, I guess I did have a pre-recorded video. I had another watch roast. I can't believe I, for some reason, thought it was the week before. So I had the third watch roast video. As a reminder, those are jokes. People submit their watches to me deliberately to have them made fun of. And so I do what I can. I try and deliver it in a very dry style, kind of like this style, without, keeping it safe for work, but being mean. And so the third one, that's actually been the best viewed one so far. I've had a few people ask me about submitting their watches in. Right now, I only do it for the 99-cent club. It's not to try and get more of you to join the 99-cent club, though if you want to, there is a link in the video description below. But rather, I don't want to get a huge volume of these and do them because they're not as fast as doing like initial reaction videos and live streams and such. Because I have to think up how I'm going to burn each of the watches. And actually, when I record, I usually I'll try a few different things and then later when I play it back, I decide which one worked best. So anyway, it's just a logistics thing. So that's why I'm doing it that way for now. Once that dries up, if I want to do more, then I may broaden it up to just anyone being able to submit. But we're not doing that at this time. Speaking of live streams, though, the last live stream actually did really, really well. I don't know why. I guess it was just an algorithm thing, because it's actually my most on recording. It's my most viewed live stream I have ever done on this channel. It was just very strange because it didn't have Rolex in the title or anything. So anyway, for those of you that joined into the channel or subscribed because you saw that, I appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy these as we move forward. So that's pretty much everything involving my channel. I will do a quick plug, and those of you watching the live chat will be able to see a link. I did get up early enough this morning to catch most of the Escapement Show's episode on quirky independent watch brands. So I'm going to plug that here because I very rarely cover quirky watches. If it's a new release, I might, and you'll almost always hear me say what the specs are and that I don't like it because I don't really do quirky. My tolerance for avant-garde is very minimal. So anyway, if you enjoy that sort of stuff, you can look at a lot of brands are mentioned in there. And you can go and then hunt out those watches and explore them more. Just as a warning up front, almost all of them are exceedingly expensive that I looked at. Almost everyone they were mentioning were very expensive engineering pieces. So we're talking near on six figures or in six figures. So not sort of stuff that most people is going to be comfortable buying. Speaking of comfort buying, though, you might like Breitling, right? Let's roll on into these new releases that I said we were going to cover. And we're going to start with one that someone asked me to cover on the last live stream, but the last live stream was too full. I mentioned it and that was it. And that was these new Chronomat that are themed around the NFL teams. So most of you probably know what the NFL is, but for those of you that are from overseas in particular, the NFL is the National Football League, so that's American football. And Breitling has done this sort of themed collaboration with the NFL where they have a limited number of watches for every single one of the teams. And I mean, otherwise it's your basic chronomat. We're still talking, it's a chonker. We're still talking over 15 millimeters thick. We're still talking 42 millimeter watch diameters. You can get them on rubber. You can get them on the bracelet, like you see in the photo here. Links to all the articles are in the video description. This is a blog to watch for these particular images. There's really not a lot to say other than that there was this decision to do this. It's a reasonably decorated movement. I did want to go ahead and note that this is the B01. It is a chronograph. So that's a very reputable movement. A lot of people speak very highly of the B01, though I have to admit I have never handled one. Like I've never actuated a chronograph with a B01. I've seen B01 watches in person, but I've not played with a chronograph. So I don't have any comments of direct hand experience on how the chronograph works. All I know is that a lot of people praise it. If you like the Chronomat, and I do, it's not my first model line that I think of when I think of Breitling. I always think of the Navitimer first, but the Chronomat is my second thought. And so 104, the limit is 104 per team. So it is fairly limited, but these watches are not cheap. They're $9,200 on the bracelet. If you want to just get it on the rubber strap instead, you'll knock it down to $8,800. I've always thought Breitlings out of the box are kind of high priced. But I do like it because, all right, this is where, and I went with a blog to watches article because I knew they had a photo of the Chiefs one. So, okay. I only watch one sport, and that's American football. And I watch, unless something happens, I watch every single Chiefs game. Not preseason. I don't care about preseason. Regular season, postseason. So would I wear this watch? Yes, I would. Would I buy this watch? Probably not. Not for $9,000. I wouldn't. I don't love it. I do think that the integration that they've done with this and the other teams looks decent. But you have to be an NFL fan. And of course, that's why they've done it by teams. No one really cares about the NFL. They care about their teams. There's the Vikings, for example. So the color integrations and all that, I think, are well chosen. It's all balanced based off of what the teams are. So, you know, if you're into any particular team, you'll probably find that these are a reasonable execution. But for what's basically a novelty watch or a novelty dial, the rest of the watch is very true to the traditional chronomat. It is a pretty big price tag. Do I think they will sell out of these? Yes, I do. With only 104 per team, I think there will be enough. Maybe there are a couple teams in the NFL where there wouldn't be enough demand because they don't play very well. But honestly, even bad teams have loyalists. So because, hey, the Chiefs were terrible for decades, and I kept watching them all the way back in the 90s. So anyway, I think it'll do okay for Breitling, but it's nothing really to write home about. It's just, if you're an NFL fan, you'll probably like to look at it. And then when you see the price, you won't. And then you'll decide just how diehard of a collector you are to want to go ahead and go for it. I didn't greet the people in the chat before we started, so I will do that now. Good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. And you were the first person to comment, as you often are. And Joe, welcome to the live stream. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member. And I hope things are going well for you in Virginia. Virginia, probably not a state that is huge with Chiefs fans, especially after winning, 3 Super Bowls over the last 6 years. But nonetheless, it is what it is. So the Breitlings are pretty expensive, right? So let's talk about some new releases from Tissot, which is a lot more down on the affordable ladder. And we're going to talk, though, the PRX. I know I'm getting tired of the PRX too. So, but apparently Tissot is not getting tired of the PRX. And that's probably a worthy point of discussion. But let's go ahead. This is Worn and Wound's article. They actually cover 3 different dial configurations. There's really 2 different concepts here. The first is what you see at the top of the screen right now, and that is this new carbon fiber version of the watch. So this is the first time that Tissot has done this sort of format. They've been playing with colors. They played with some case materials-esque. I say esque because they've done like some gold plating and stuff, but it's always, to my knowledge, been a stainless steel watch. Quartz versions, which I used to own one. The mechanical versions, that's what these all are, which are the Powermatic 80 movement watches. And these are in the 40 millimeter sizing. So I guess I said, so forged carbon is actually the material. Here's a wrist shot that'll give you a better sense of it. I think it looks I actually like the look of forged carbon and carbon fiber and all the variants of that carbon use. This is not a dive watch, which comforts me. I've seen some, they've been doing this material with dive watches, and I find that odd. My biggest concern with any forged carbon, carbon fiber, however we want to describe it, watches are, I am not convinced long term that that material will maintain its binding. I suppose it depends on how you use it. However, I have heard some people report with lower cost watches like this that it started to delaminate, that the carbon fiber starts to delaminate. And the reason I made my mention about dive watches with forged carbon is the whole carbon fiber thing is what that submersible that tried to go down to the Titanic and imploded was made out of for its hull. So I don't think it's a proper material for diving. Anyway, I do think it's a pretty nice execution of the, well, I didn't mean to right click on the PRX. You might get a little bit of Zenith vibes. Zenith Defy line has done some stuff like this. So I do think it's attractive. I don't know that I would go for it. Maybe because it's cheap enough. That's always been my other issue is I don't want to spend over $1,000 for a forged carbon case. This is just under $1,000. Then the other one that I wasn't going to cover because I think this came out, I thought this announcement was a little bit older, but I figured we might as well since it's in the same article. And that is they've gone ahead and they've done some gradient dial versions of the stainless steel PRX. Again, wow, I'm just right clicking a lot. It's okay. It's fun. The watch is cheap enough that I think people might be willing to go ahead and spring for this if you were looking for something a little more playful. I think that the Tissot watches, by and large, they come in a variety of colors for the dials, so you could already get some fun-looking ones. But the way they do the gradient, it's not like a Fume or anything where the effect is even and goes like darker towards the edges. It's really more of a top-down approach. So you have this almost horizontal coloration that goes across from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And as you move further towards 6 o'clock, the color changes. I think it's a cool looking effect. It's an affordable enough watch that they'll probably move units that way. So I see why they did it, though it's not like a sub $500 watch. I would probably have rather seen this in quartz. I think they'd have done more with them. I think they've been able to move more of them, I should say, as units. So as I mentioned, just under $1,000, it's $995 for the forged carbon version of the watch. And then the gradient dial version is actually $725. By and large, they're pretty much the same. I would say a couple of differences with the forged carbon besides the material. One, it's thicker, even though it's 40 millimeters. It is a thicker watch. The forged carbon is going to be over 11 millimeters thick, whereas the stainless steel ones are just under 11 millimeters. It's like a 3 millimeter spread, so it's pretty close. The other thing is that there's a silicone hairspring in the forged carbon one to provide it better magnetic resistance. I'm assuming because forged carbon wasn't doing enough versus what the stainless steel case would to resist magnetism, perhaps for people going through the airport and such. But again, between the two, between like the gradient concepts, I think there are a couple of gradients, and this forged carbon, I do think the forged carbon is more attractive. It's subtle. I think it looks very good on this rubber strap. But my concerns with the material would keep me away still, even at sub 1,000. I think I would want something closer to 500 to take the chance on that particular material. Whereas I'm more trusting of other materials that I still haven't owned, like ceramic, just in terms of, I think if ceramic fails, it's because I screwed up. I don't know on forged carbon. I think that might just be, I just don't trust the material. I don't know how it's going to behave in the sun. Like, is UV going to break it down? All that sort of stuff. So those are my main concerns that I have with the watch. All right, so let's jump to Rolex. Do we have a new Rolex? No, we do not. It's Rolex does sometimes release new watches during between watches and wonders. They have for the last couple of years done some specialty stuff, but this is actually going to be a book. So let me go ahead and full screen it here so you can get a good look. This is Hodinkee that has this article, but this has been covered in a number of places. So I'm sure you've probably heard something about it. I think someone shared this with me on Instagram and someone posted it in the Watches with Dennis Discord. Again, link in the video description to that if you want to join it. And so I sort of saw it in a couple places simultaneously, but it took me a little while to read up on it. So this is, I'll go ahead and read up here so you can see me, but this is a So it's just a book about one model line of Rolex, the Submariner. And there have been a number of books about Rolex watches. It's kind of a big brand. A lot of people have written books on various Rolex models. But the thing is, the decision here is that, I guess what makes it special was the decision of Rolex to make it be the first authorized history of the Submariner model. I don't think that makes it very special at all. It's not like trying to pick between a knockoff homage of a Rolex Submariner and a Rolex Submariner. Who cares if the book is the authorized book or the non-authorized book? If the photos are good, and that's what it basically is a picture book. It's a hardback book. It's over, I know it's over 100 pages. You can see the thickness here. This article actually does not say the pricing. Someone shared the pricing in the Watches with Dennis Discord, and it is over $100. So this is not, that doesn't shock me, given it is a coffee, what I call a coffee table book. I usually would say that rather than a picture book. I think there's some respect for the author. I think he's known. I don't know him, but I think he's known in watch circles. So the thought is that it probably is a very good book that will be quite substantial in terms of, covering all sorts of stuff. Hodinkee did not yet have the book. I believe these images are provided by Rolex to them. So you just see a few examples of like some of the ad campaigns and stuff that they did, and talking about the technology to make the watch water resistant and stuff. So I think this book will do pretty well. I don't know that I would buy it. I don't own a coffee table. So I've often thought about getting coffee table books. And so because of that, I thought, it's nice to be able to, and I do actually have some books, not on watches, but I've had people, like, I have a great one. I think it's a great one on the art of Atari. So like when the company Atari was started and started making video games, and we're talking early 8-bit era where the games had no graphics to speak of, the art on the cartridges were how they got you to buy the game. And there were, it was a big thing. Like they had real artists doing real, like, hand painted stuff. So it's a really cool book. So I could see a book like this living alongside things like that. I got some other like video game and pinball coffee table books that go over those. And, it's mostly just a celebration of the look of the stuff. And there's usually little blurbs on the history and things, but people mostly look at them for the photos. So in that regard, this is probably perfectly good. I don't know where it is price competitive against other picture books that might have Submariners. I don't care enough to cross-reference that. So is this one going to be better? I don't know. With Rolex opening up their stuff for Nicholas to do his work, and he might have a few things in there that weren't otherwise covered. So it's just, Rolex is such a popular brand. It's not like Parmigiani, where no one would know. Well, Parmigiani is a pretty young brand, but no one really knows much about it. Like, it's hard to dig into some of these brands, like really historic Blancpain before Blancpain's name was revived. Like, I don't know where you would go to get that stuff. Rolex, it's been so popular for so long that a lot of this stuff is pretty low hanging fruit, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I think this will do pretty well for them. Welcome to the live stream, Koji, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Koji asks, well, you have to have had watched at least 1,000 hours of Rolex videos to qualify getting on the list for this book. Maybe. I don't know yet the buying parameters. Here would be an idea, though. If you go into your authorized dealer and they don't have the Rolex available for you, they could offer to sell you this book instead. Maybe that's what they'll do. Instead of having to buy the Tudor, you could go ahead and buy this Submariner book because you couldn't get the Submariner itself. That said, the book being only between like $100 and $250, it's not going to move you up the list. But I don't know that the Tudor honestly moved you up the list either. So for that regard, that's what I would do with it. I'd give it as AD fodder to be able to give you something. They'll still make you buy it. It's not like a gift. They'll still make you pay for it, but it gives them something else to sell that's more related to the brand, honestly, than giving you or convincing you to buy a sister brand watch, in my opinion. Koji adds that Nick has done a great book on Patek, and it is quite the dandy. Okay, I had known it. I've seen some people in comments, maybe it was the Hodinkee article, may have been a different article, talking about Nick, and it's just that, like, they liked what he's done before in the world of books on horology. So I didn't have any memory of what it was. So Patek. Okay, well, that's another company where it's probably pretty easy to get a lot of material, even if you didn't rely on Patek Philippe. the thing that I think is interesting about Rolex versus Patek is Patek has celebrated its history for a long time. Rolex does not. That's probably the most interesting thing about this announcement about the book and them doing this official collaboration. Can't remember who it was. It was a watch journalist who had mentioned that they were at an event, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 2019 or so. I think it was pre-pandemic, but just before. And there was some stuff about, Rolex had their new watches or whatever. And someone had asked something about, like, if they had thought about establishing a museum or what they think, or like what they do about preservation of the old watches, or people's, one of the biggest concerns people have when they send in Rolexes for servicing is, will the Rolex, especially if it goes back to Rolex itself, will they do dial swaps? Are they going to change the hands? Are they going to take away the authenticity and put in more modern stuff? And a lot of people don't like that. And the Rolex representative that responded to this journalist, nutshell summary, I wish I could remember it exactly, said, why would anyone care about our old stuff? Our new stuff is better. And it was a very interesting thing to say, because it seems so unlike almost any other brand, but almost every other brand, from Vacheron and Patek to the attempts to tie in that Chapek and Blancpain have, the kind of their artificial ties to the past, even though they're completely different, companies that are just reviving old names essentially. But there's this reliance on history, the reliance on the pedigree of the name, and the heritage of the brand is a key part of what they try and do. You could even argue Tudor, even though being owned by Holmes Wilsdorf and thus, being in the same family as Rolex, leans so heavily on the heritage line of that's what brought them back. The Black Bay is just a bunch of heritage looks put together in a watch that people want. But for Rolex, part of it I get, because part of it's kind of like what we even see out of Tudor now. And it'd say, well, the Submariner has lived on ever since it's come out. It's not had a break. So the Submariner has lived on, and a modern Submariner looks a lot like an old Submariner. So I think part of it's that, like, it's not like Vacheron bringing back the 222. Like, the sub never went anywhere. So for Rolex, I think part of it's that, but part of it is their desire and their appeal ties to their marketing and their association with success. And people just know the name so well. The name is what moves it. When I first got my Explorer 2, I went in not knowing what Rolexes really looked like, quite frankly. I had some professional success and I wanted a Rolex. So I found a used one and I got it. And I didn't think anything of, I knew what, before I went in, I knew like what a sub was, and I knew I wanted a sub, and I'd seen subs from, Sean Connery wearing them in the early James Bond movies and stuff. But like, I wouldn't have been able to tell you anything about the GMT Master 2 or Yacht Master or any of that. I didn't know any of that. And anyway, long story short, I think for Rolex, for them, they don't need their history. No one, people will talk about like the whole Everest climb and all of that, but honestly, what sells Rolex is this. It's the name on the dial, and that's what's moving those watches. And yes, their reputation for having a high quality timepiece, and that's where I think Rolex is like, why would you want an old one? The new one's more accurate, less maintenance is needed, more robust, better power. It's like, it's better in every regard. So they don't understand why people obsess over 5-digit Rolexes or 4-digit Rolexes. To them, those are inferior models, because the new stuff is the best stuff. So it's just a very, very different perspective. The Rolex perspective, I think, fits so much with like what you would expect out of a tech company, where newer is always better. And so in some ways it feels weird coming out of such an old school, antiquated technology brand like mechanical watches. But anyway, so there's the new book. So those of you that are into that will be able to go and check that out. I believe Amazon does have, you can buy it through Amazon, and you will ultimately be able to. I don't know if it's out yet or not. So let's jump to the last one. This one came up on the Discord also, and I wanted to weigh in on it. I'm going to whine a little bit. So there's going to be, I'm going to say it's going to be a Dennis rant. It may turn into one. I hope it doesn't. I don't care. I don't care if it turns into it or not. Compliments of Monochrome is where this article is. Let's talk about King Seiko. Okay. So there are 3 new King Seikos. You see them on the screen. They look nice. I actually am very fond of a lot of the King Seiko aesthetic. In some ways, it reminds me a lot of Grand Seiko. In some ways, it feels different. I say the biggest thing that breaks King Seiko from Grand Seiko is I think the bracelets look a lot more interesting on these King Seikos. But we're still talking Dolphin style hands, as you can see here. We're still talking like a double baton style indice, a little differently executed than Grand Seiko, I would say, but the format itself still feels very grammar of design to me. So, they're polished. All right, is this Zaratsu? Maybe not. Probably not. But nonetheless, got this basic configuration, kind of the heritage Grand Seiko line configuration, but out of King Seiko. So, dials with different textures and stuff. And I think these dials do look pretty good. This is probably my favorite one just because of the texturing. Reminds me of leaves. And I think you can see it reasonably well without having to get out a loop. The rest of them, they all have nice patterns to them. So I'm not quite sure what the Reds pattern is. Hopefully there's a close-up here. Yes, there is. Okay, so it's like little flowers, I think. So anyway, Seiko in nature, or Grand Seiko in nature. Apparently King Seiko in nature is a thing as well. These do not have display case backs. They are closed, which is what I think they've done with all of the King Seikos, all the ones I can regularly think of. They do have Zaratsu surfaces. Okay. So 50 meters of water resistance. Okay. They look a little bit like generic sports watches. So I would hope more like Datejust style. You'd get 100, but you get 50. That wouldn't put me off, but I know it will put a number of people off. And they're powered by the 6L35 movement, which is a 4 hertz, 45 power reserve movement. Here's the bracelet. So you have this double fastened clasp where you push the two buttons and they will release. I like that clasp style, though sizing is sometimes tricky because a lot of times they don't have micro adjust. I know some models of not Seiko, maybe Seiko does, but I know some models have things like where the clasp conceals some half links or adjustment features, so you can actually make some tweaking beyond full links, or they offer half links, but I don't see half links on this. So this might be a little bit of a pain to size, just as an FYI. Here's a picture of the close case back. It's fairly Spartan, and there's really nothing to write home about with it. Here's my issue. It's often been my issue. Almost everything about this watch looks great for me. It's 38.6 millimeters in diameter. So I'm going to do a price conversion here because that's what's going to come up. So if you hear me typing, that is what you hear. Just under 11 millimeters in thickness. That's fine. 45, almost 46 millimeters lug to lug. That's a really wearable size. It would really work well for me. And I already mentioned I like how the dials look, and I like their 7-link bracelet. I think it looks nice with the folding clasp. Just almost everything about this watch looks really good to me. But it's 3,400 euro. Okay, that is almost 4,000. Or no, I was going to say that's almost 4,000 US dollars. However, that'd be 3,600 euros. So this is more like 3,750 US. All right. So let's just say $3,700. All right. This is a $3,700 watch with the 6L35. All right. What did I tell you? I told you I had a 45-hour power reserve, and I told you it was 4 hertz. What I didn't tell you is how inaccurate it is. That is a -10 to +15 seconds per day movement. That is trash. That is a trash accuracy rate for a watch that is a sports watch. This is a sports watch. This is a generic sports watch. No, it's not a dive watch. No, it's not a pilot's watch. This is right in the vein of the 1926 from Tudor, a cheaper watch, by the way, using a third-party movement, but those price in around, oh gosh, I'd have to check what Tudor's current pricing is on that. In fact, I probably will do that. Or the Datejust, which, yes, is a more expensive watch, but that's this vibe, right? Date at the 3 o'clock, basic stainless steel thing. What is the Tudor 1926? Because I'm thinking of the gray market prices. Okay. Yeah, no, it's here. I'll show you on the screen. Yeah. So I'm talking things that aren't even $3,000 that are more accurate. These use probably Solitas at this point. They used to use Eddas. I had one of these, not this color, but thin, by the way. I had a 39 millimeter. It wasn't even 10 millimeters thick. Yeah, just the 38-hour power reserve of the basic movement, but they regulated them to COSC. They are not COSC certified. They are the tier below where they are not actually tested by COSC. But they get them to near on that accuracy, or at least the one I had was that accuracy. And then I have this much more interesting dial, I would say, than the waffle patterns of the 1926, but less water resistance, more thickness, and a trash tier movement. And this is what pisses me off about Seiko. I guess I am going to rant a little bit. This is what pisses me off about them, though, is this is absolutely ridiculous. Why do they have watches that cost this much money, over $3,500 US, 3,400 euro, and they don't even promise you single digit ranges on the timekeeping? Is the accuracy of the timekeeping the most important thing when it comes to a watch? No, especially a mechanical watch. I get it. It's almost silly for me to whine about it, except I'm paying some pretty significant money. Is it a dress watch? No, it is not. They're not going for high-end thinness or precious metal or, doing something where like a reverso might have this level of accuracy. But I can understand that because a reverso is trying to get itself into a very compact case, not to mention that the movement is shaped. This doesn't have any of that. This is a drop-in common plebe Seiko movement marked up to $3,500. And at this price point, you should be getting things that are within cost accuracy if they're going to be on bracelets. That's my opinion. I just feel that it looks good. It's way overpriced for what it is. And the movement is one of the biggest problems. I do have a couple other nitpicks. I think it works okay, but I don't love that they do not color match the date windows. What they've done is the darker dials get a black date disc and the lighter one gets a white one. So you see this had a black date disc. The blue one has the same black date disc. And you see the purple one, because it's a lighter shade, gets the white date disc. So it's like they have black discs and white discs and they don't color match. And I would prefer seeing color match. Not seeing it, I do think that the dark ones look good, the blue being the best. I think it works the best because it blends in pretty well, given they fume the dial out. So it actually does get dark towards the edge, and I can kind of forgive it here. It's much more noticeable, obviously, on the red. It doesn't fume nearly enough to make that disc look integrated. And, of course, white is almost always going to stand out unless you've got a polar dial or something. So it's okay. And I know other high-end expensive watches do this, like Omega, like they'll color match their date discs on their 300Ms and then they don't color match them on the Aquaterras, and I can't figure it out, but that's Omega gonna mega. So I guess that's kind of the thing here. And again, Grand Seiko often doesn't color match the date discs either. So it's just a Seiko thing. There's just so much about King Seiko, which operates under Seiko proper, and Grand Seiko, which operates as its own entity. But you can feel the industrialization that they do. You can feel the mass production of it. And all the watches that are in these price points are mass produced, right? I know the Tudors are mass produced. We know the Rolexes are mass produced. We know the Omegas are mass produced. But for, $3,750 US, they don't decorate the movement, so they hide their shame with a closed case back. So I'm glad that they hide it, but why isn't it decorated enough to show off at this price point? I'm on the fence on pushing that one because it's still cheap enough that I wouldn't necessarily feel that they need to. But the movement being they might as well put a 4R in here. At least then everyone would trust that it was robust. But I hear so many complaints about the 6 series movements from Seiko, but I'm just bothered that it's still so inaccurate. And I don't get it, but that's something I very much associate with Seiko. They do not care about movement accuracy. That a lot of their movements are more accurate than what they advertise, I will acknowledge. However, I still remain deeply concerned that they aren't comfortable enough in their own engineering to promise better accuracy out of those movements, if that is indeed the case. So anyway, I guess I did do a little mini rant. Sorry about that. But they're decently looking watches. If I was to get a King Seiko, I would get one without the dates. The first ones of the revivals don't have the dates. I think it's a better look. I don't have any of my whining about the date disc when there's no date. Other than that, I will still say I'm not really thrilled with. We have Seiko and then King Seiko in a different font, and it's kind of big. And then automatic. I don't get saying why not just say Seiko and then King Seiko? Why we have to print automatic? A lot of brands do that, but they don't need to take up this much space with all this text. I don't know. There's just a number of things I would never buy this new. Never. Maybe gray. Maybe gray if it was really marked down. I've seen other King Seiko revivals. They have taken a bath secondhand. So if you really want one and you don't mind some scratches, definitely look secondhand because there's no reason to pay $3,700 for something like this. They do not hold value. And that's good if you want it secondhand. But I understand why they don't, because I think this is way overpriced. It needs a much better movement for the price point that they're asking for, in my opinion. David Von Slingshot, welcome to the live stream. Timex came out with a new automatic titanium chrono. Did they? I may search that up here because we still have some time. And that was actually the last watch I wanted us to talk about. Koji says, if I had the extra money to burn, I'd probably get a Grand Seiko and put it on the King Seiko bracelet. That would be interesting. I have not tried on I've been to Watch Shop with the King Seikos. I probably should have asked them to take them out of the box and let me try one of them on, because I have not handled the bracelet. I like the look, but I want to know if I like how it feels. Obviously, they're not going to let me size it, so I know for sure if I can get it really comfortable or not. But I would be curious about that, because the Grand Seiko bracelets are garbage. I guess it's Grand Seiko that's announced that they're going to start allowing a taper, like a tapered bracelet. But I had a Heritage Grand Seiko, and it was unfortunate. I do miss that watch sometimes because it had a great dial. It was the champagne dial that they do all the layers on. Oh, it was a really good, probably my best dial I've ever had, aside from my Moser Pioneer, but a much cheaper watch than the Moser. So for that, it was that dial. I have a video review of it. You can see the dial. It looked great. It looked great in artificial, like in studio lighting, like what I'm using right now. It looked really slick. So take a look at it. It's a very, very rich dial. And they don't make the model I had anymore. They do have a newer one, and they also have that dial configuration in quartz. So if you really don't like paying the spring drive price, because I had a spring drive one, take a look at the quartz one. It's very, very nice looking. It's the same dial, other than like the power reserve and stuff. It's the same dial formulation that they do for the colorway. Koji adds, I know you're a bracelet guy, but you'll be much better off with a Grand Seiko on a strap. Well, and I mean, I've ended up having to do that. Like my Omega, which I will be in it when I end this live stream. I will go. I finally have a buyer for my Omega 300M. My biggest issue with the Omega 300M, I loved how it, like the heft, I love picking up that watch on bracelet. That non-tapering bracelet would get hot spots around the wrist. Oh, I am wearing the Moser today, so I guess I didn't mention that. But these come on rubber straps, no bracelet on this version. But anyway, I would often wear it on silicone or sometimes NATO. That's probably why I didn't have very many scratches on the bracelet of my Omega, because I didn't wear it on the bracelet, because the bracelet would get hot in certain spots on the wrist, and it was just uncomfortable. Even though I could size it well, it was weird. It felt hot. I heard someone once complain about hot spots with a bracelet, and I didn't know what that meant. Even my Grand Seiko didn't do that, probably because it didn't weigh as much as that Omega, but the Omega did. So I'm finally, that one's out. The only watch I still have left of the 6 I was selling is my Oris Pro Pilot. Is the only one yet to sell. So anyway, back to David Von Slingshot's mentioning of the Timex new automatic titanium chrono. I wanted to try and find it. I think I have. Have I done well? I do try and do well. So $350, that's actually a pretty nice price. Normally when I think affordable titanium, I think Citizen, because they do a lot of it. But they don't tend to do it in automatic. They tend to do it in Eco Drive. And I like their Eco Drive a lot. But if you really want a mechanical watch, Eco Drive isn't going to make you very happy. So let's see. It's 41 millimeter case. I don't know much. 200 meters of water resistance. That is pretty impressive. They do have a display case back. Undecorated, but not too surprising given the price point. I don't really like having this huge amount of glass printed text. That's straight out of Grand Seiko too. They love to print on their glass and make it so you can't see the, since the movement's nothing special to look at, I don't really fault them per se. But normally when people want a display case back, whether it's decorated or not, they want to look at the movement. I see David has now said that's not the chrono, and he did say chrono, so I did not do well. I did very, very, very wrong. Okay, let's see if we can find the chrono. Is it an expedition? I don't know. Let's go to the automatic watches. We're exploring Timex live, guys. We're gonna do it live. I'm looking for chronos. Not seeing chronos. Still not seeing chronos. Is it not out yet? Is it not out yet? Maybe they stored it somewhere else. I don't know. I'm not gonna I don't make people watch when I do searches. I hate watching searches, but oh, he clarifies that it's the GMT was what he was trying to mention. Okay. Okay, so did we see that one? Titanium GMT. Let me just search for that. Titanium GMT. All right. It's processing, guys. Okay. Well, there are two. This one reminds me of the Explorer 2. Here, let me get the chat out of the way so you can more easily see it. This one reminds me of the Rolex Explorer 2 and the Tudor Black Bay Pro. And then there's this one with the rotating bezel. $750 for the one on bracelet. I like this one better, so I'm clicking on it. And this one's $550 on strap. So 41 millimeters, bidirectional rotating bezel. Still got 200 meters of water resistance, though. That's nice. Oh, interesting. I did not know about these. Okay, so sometimes Timex doesn't tell you what type of movement specifically it is. So they'll usually just give you some basic information like the number of jewels and stuff on it. So it does have another display case back, however. Still probably a slightly modified version of the movement we looked at earlier to accommodate the GMT complication. But otherwise, as again, you would expect at this price point, they don't decorate the movement, but they do let you look at it as much as you can see past the printed text. So, all right. Well, thank you. That was interesting to take a look at. I did not know about titanium out of Timex. Travis, welcome to the live stream, by the way, Travis. Where do collectors typically sell used watches? I would say they typically do one of two places, Chrono24 and eBay. And I've sold on both. So I prefer selling on Chrono24 for two reasons. One, the fee is a lot lower. Chrono24 takes a 6.5% off of the sale price of the watch. Not sure if that includes the part that you would attribute to shipping or not, but let's just assume yes. And it's a very secure system. So, well, like for the Omega that I sold, I got a message from the person asking if I would ship it to their where they work because they'd have to sign for the package. Chrono24 will provide you like fraudulent chargeback protection. They take the money in escrow. So the person's already had to pay. It's in an escrow account. I will get paid once they get the watch. Like Chrono24 will be notified when the watch arrives. That person has up to 7 days to release the payment confirming and letting me get paid. And if they don't after 7 days, I get paid anyway. But I have to ship to the address in the site. So he put his home address in the site. So I told him, look, I don't give up my protection. That's why I use Chrono24. It's going to go to your house. I'm not sending it to your business. You need to put your business address in if that's where you wanted it to go. And he's like, oh, I understand. So done and done. As long as you pay, as long as you do it through the escrow and you pay for the insurance on the watch, you're basically protected. eBay has been known to side with the buyer more often. So that may be great when I'm shopping for watches, but when I'm selling watches, it's an as is. Like I'll read it on the time grapher. I'll give people as many photos as they want. I am not a retailer. This is a personal watch. I do not do take backs. We do not do returns. I don't have restocking fees. I just don't restock. You're stuck with the watch once you buy it. So be sure you want it. eBay charges you 15% for a sale on a watch. That's one of the higher percentages. They do things by category. So watch categories start at 15%. That percentage does drop, but it doesn't drop until like the first $5,000 or so. So for most people, it's going to be 15% because most of the watches people tend to sell aren't going to rise above $5,000. And you have the other concerns. The difference, though, is eBay gets you a lot more eyeballs, a lot more. Chrono24 does not. And Chrono24, it can be difficult because they don't have categories by default for all of the watches. So I've had things like when I sold my Zodiac watch, it didn't like some of the stuff wasn't already in the system, and you can still put it in, but I just didn't get a lot of like browsing eyeballs. Whereas if I did it on eBay, it was a lot easier to like I sold my Tissot PRX quartz on eBay because there were a lot of people that were looking there for Tissots, and I just got a lot of eyeballs, and I was able to sell it in 2 days, and it just went a lot faster. So with Chrono24, that Omega I've had listed for 2 months now, and I've been slowly dropping the price. In both places, you will get tire kickers. In eBay, you can control it. On eBay, you can put in like reject anyone who makes an offer below a certain amount, which is nice. On Chrono24, I can't tell you how many people messaged me offering me $2,500 for a 300M. I could get at least 2,800. Some offered up to 2,900 from a secondhand dealer. So me wanting over 3,000 was not unreasonable, especially now I'm going to whine a little bit about that, especially when the cheapest one of the model I had that I saw was 3,700 and I started mine at 35 and I ended up dropping it by 100. Like usually if I don't get a watch sold in a week, I usually drop the price on expensive stuff by 100, sometimes 50 if I think I'm already being pretty generous. Because watches just don't fly off the shelf necessarily unless they're a really, really hot model or something. So anyway, guess that's just a little bit of my selling advice. I've traded a lot more than I've sold to secondhand dealers because you avoid all of that headache. But I've never sold one to a dealer. It's always been, will you take this as trade towards another watch? You get more value when you do it as trade because they also had profit built into the watch they're trying to get rid of. And I've done that for most of the watches, most of the luxury watches I've let go of because I hate dealing with tire kickers. I hate worrying about the shipping. I sold an Orient watch, which is not an expensive watch, but I watched it go to New York where the person was, and then the post office took it to Louisiana, and I thought I was going to have to do a whole insurance claim for a $100 watch, and it was just going to be finally it got to him, but it's just like, with the dealers, also they'll give you a FedEx label. You take it to FedEx, it gets boxed up. You don't pay the postage. You don't worry about any of that. You don't lose the percentage to the site. So it's just I'm not looking for more watches right now, so I want money. So that's why I'm selling them. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I actually do have to go to the post office, so I will go ahead and close it out. No reason for us to talk about things when we are out of topics to go over. Again, as follow-ups, I will have the Parmigiani Tonda PF micro rotor review out probably tomorrow would be my thinking. It's recorded. I just haven't done the editing yet, but reviews are relatively easy to edit. So it shouldn't take me too long. And that's all until next Saturday. We will plan another live stream. I don't know if we'll cover new watch releases or we'll do maybe a more theoretical topic or something about the hobby in general. I haven't decided yet. I don't think that far ahead, but we will find out at that time. Otherwise, I will thank everyone who was able to tune in live for watching. I do appreciate it. Thank you to the chat for participating. That's what makes it interactive and fun. So thank you for doing that. And those of you who are watching the recording, leave your comments on any of those watches that we talked about and giving your thoughts. I do go back and read the comments, so I do appreciate those. And that is it for this episode. I will talk to you all on the next one.